Hello, in this podcast we're learning about the rock cycle, and our learning target is to explain how rocks and minerals are formed. And this podcast is basically a review over stuff that we learned in earth science. First thing we need to do is look at the difference between rocks and minerals. And minerals are solid chemical substances with uniform, usually crystalline structures. This substance here is a mineral. It's one substance and is identified by its properties. It's identified by how hard it is. It's identified by what its powder is like. See, when you rub it up against a porcelain tile. It also by many of its other properties, like if you notice that when it wasn't cut in its shape, into this shape, it broke in its shape, just like the mineral that's pictured over here. Rocks are composed of one or more minerals. The one that you see there, you can see the actual minerals that are there. Each different color that you see in that picture of granite is a mineral. Also in this rock here, this one, if you look at it with a magnifying glass, you would see that this rock here, which is sandstone, is composed of cemented sand grains. Some rocks are composed of non-crystalline structures, like this over here is obsidian, and this basically is volcanic glass. The rock cycle is something that you have to know, and the rock cycle shows how rocks can change from one rock into another. And what's important in the rock cycle is where it ends up. The identity of a mineral is determined by its structure because it's one substance. The identity of a rock is determined by its formation. So if you look on here, an igneous rock is formed by the cooling or the solidification or crystallization of magma, and magma or lava is formed by the melting of any other kind of rock. It could be any one of the three: igneous rock, sedimentary rock, or metamorphic rock. And metamorphic rock can be caused by heat and or pressure. And sedimentary rock comes from sediments being but also cemented together. First we'll look at igneous rocks. This here is from a picture I took in Idaho, and in the background over there you can see a volcano. And this picture is of what used to be a lava field. So these here are igneous rocks. And I'll show you here a video which shows you how this particular structure forms. So you saw how in that video, the structure of the lava, the different ripples and stuff like that in the lava, how those are solidified in the same thing that you see here in the basaltic rocks, the igneous rocks that you see here, the type of rock that this is basalt. And here you see the same thing also, and here you see the lava itself solidifying. So just to put these two together, that lava is liquid rock on the surface. Magma is what we call lava when it's underground, liquid rock underground, and that igneous rocks form from solidifying or crystallizing lava or magma. And another important thing to understand about igneous rocks is that the deeper the magma is, the longer that it takes to solidify. And the longer it takes to solidify, the larger the crystals. If we look at this rock over here, this is obsidian. This is igneous. It's an igneous rock, but it has no crystals. The reason why it has no crystals is because it solidified so quickly there was no time for the crystals to form. Now what's the story behind this rock over here? If you look at this has two crystal sizes. One crystal size is fairly large. They're about the size of the penny. The other crystals are so small that they're microscopic. We can't see them without looking at it in a microscope. Now since the crystals are of two different sizes, that means that they took different lengths of time to crystallize. So this rock had to have formed at two different depths. This rock first had to have started solidifying deep down, very slowly, and then the magma moved up and finished crystallizing at a much shallower depth and at a much faster. Now we come to sedimentary rocks. And sedimentary rocks are made from sediments. There are several different kinds. There are clastic sedimentary rocks. These are made from rock fragments. If you look at the picture there, you see that this rock over here is made from sediments that are cemented together. You can see that there are some pebbles put together with sand. And what happens, the way you get this is, first there are rocks that are weathered, means that the rocks are broken down, and that creates the sediment. And then erosion is the transportation of the sediments. Could be by running water, could be by wind, could be by gravity. And then that sediment gets buried and then compacted by the pressure from the weight of sediments on top of it. And then it gets cemented by something coming down and cementing it together. Like if you look at the sandstone here, the reason why the sandstone is brown is because iron oxide is one of the things that's cementing the sand grains together. Some rock contain fossils, and if they are mostly fossils, then they are foliferous sedimentary rocks. Other ones could be like this over here, where if you see fossils where it's just an impression, and this is actually a clastic one, which is, I believe this is shale, and what happened here is just some fern leaves got buried in the mud, and then the mud turned into a rock, which is shale, and it preserved the record of the fern leaves. Another thing that could happen is that a lake or a sea can dry up, like the Great Salt Lake is drying up in Utah, or the Aral Sea in Russia is because the rivers that feed into the Aral Sea are being used for irrigation. So as the water there evaporates, there are chemicals or salts that are in there, and they precipitate out, and they make this chemical sedimentary rocks, like the rock salt that is pictured here. Now we come to metamorphic rocks. And you notice in here there are two rocks. You've got one that's more of a grayish rock and another that's a whitish rock. The grayish rock is limestone and the whitish rock is marble. Metamorphic means change. The marble used to be the limestone, the same limestone that is pictured here. What happened is that marble was once in contact with magma. It didn't get hot enough to melt. If it had melted, it would have become an igneous rock. But it was close enough that it got heated up and it recrystallized, and it got changed from limestone into marble. And that's called contact metamorphism. And you see it here. This picture is from Fort Tryon Park in the upper part of Manhattan. Over here is the parent rock that we see throughout most of Manhattan. This is Manhattan schist. That's actually this rock here, which is not quite as weathered as what you see over there. This is like a fresh face of it. Schist is a very, very shiny rock. Here is an igneous rock, and this was once magma that was basically squeezed its way in between the schist. And where the schist contacted with the magma, it got heated up and was metamorphosed, and that's contact metamorphism, and that's what you see on either side of the igneous rock. Regional metamorphism occurs when tectonic plates crash together, and those will heat and squeeze the rocks. So this granite, which you see on the left, where you see how the minerals there are all randomly scattered, then become aligned together, making this gneiss. And with the crashing tectonic plates, we'll see about that in the next podcast on plate tectonics. And just briefly, that type of thing is what makes mountains where continents crash together. And that's right now what's making the Himalayas, where India is crashing into Asia. And just a reminder, in the rock cycle, in a question, if you're ever given a sequence of events of the history of a rock, the important thing is the last one, because the last one is what identifies the rock. Now we come to our concluding questions. Number 1, what determines the identity of a mineral? Number 2, what determines the identity of a rock? And number 3, how do each of the 3 types of rocks form? That concludes this podcast, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.